To share with you today, Michael Lavery. Coming up, cameraman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McKinney.
It's my honor.
So is the lavalier mic working here?
It is on.
I am very grateful for this opportunity to speak in front of this wonderful crowd. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I also would care to thank Mr. McKinney for inviting me here to share some information that's within this 308-page manuscript called Whole Brain Power. This book literally is 30 years in the making. I started the first draft literally 19 years ago. And I almost published this book, and at that time it was called The Future of the Games. And then some things happened, and I realized it wasn't quite ready. And then I was very fortunate to meet a man named Gregory S. Walsh. And when Gregory met me at a golf event, he was impressed by some of the hand-eye coordination skills that I was demonstrating, because he was filming this reality show for a golfer named Ogie. He's the fastest golfer in the world. Have you ever seen the gentleman that hits the balls rapid fire? His name is David Ogren, and he has these world records where he hits balls 100 yards, and he does somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 in one day. 12,000. He has a setter, his name is Speedy. So I'm on the show with this guy and the initial taping that never really got off the ground, but it was an opportunity where I had a chance to meet this gentleman named Gregory S. Walsh. And when Mr. Walsh spends some time with me, he was looking at this very unusual skill of mine in which I write half of my books left-handed backwards. So there's a gentleman that lived many years ago named Leonardo da Vinci that also wrote left-handed mirror image. And as a matter of fact, over 7,000 pages of Leonardo da Vinci's handwriting were in mirrored script. And they were wondering why he was doing it. The most expensive book purchased to date is 70 pages long, purchased by Bill Gates for $30.8 million. It's called the Codex Leicester. And one of the ways that I started to think outside of the box is that I'm an artist. And I never had a regular job. And I can get into why I never had a regular job. One of the reasons I never decided to get the regular job is because my artistic spirit trumped the wishes of my mother and father that wanted me to follow in my brother's footsteps and get a real job. So one of the reasons that I avoided that lifestyle to this point in my life, I might get a job someday. My mom still calls me up and says, "Michael, have you got a job yet?" So I said, "Mom, I'm looking for one." But the only problem is every time I think about getting a job, I start to stutter because it reminds me of my brother. So when I was 15 years of age, I almost died in a football game. I compound fractured my left femur about 5 inches above the knee and almost hemorrhaged. And I was in the hospital for 4 months, and they had to break my leg 3 different times. And if you want to talk about depression, just go in a time machine when I was 15 years of age, and I was in a bed for literally 4 months. And the fact of the matter is you can't get out of bed when you're in traction, so you have to do what most people do normally in the bathroom, and it's very embarrassing for a 15-year-old kid. And the fact of the matter is that when your leg is 17 degrees off of being on the proper angle from the hip down to the knee, and you look at it, you go, "Oh my God, I'm maimed," and then I have to go in and break it again. So that experience in my life got me into being a musician and an oil painter and a sculptor and a gentleman that memorized many different passages of Shakespeare and songs and numbers. So what happened to me when I was 15 was my right brain came out of the box. And I never let it go back inside the box. So when I realized that I had this gift of gab, because my right brain and my left brain were connected, and I could convince people to buy my artwork, I said to myself, I think I can make a living as an artist. So I was selling paintings in high school and practicing guitar and practicing a lot of guitar and a lot more guitar than studying in school. But for some reason, I still do rather well. I was 70 in my class rank out of 720 students, and I didn't study that hard. I have to admit, I didn't study that hard. But now, if I had to do it again, I would have tried to be number one in my class, because I have techniques of enhanced memory that I can demonstrate to people, and they start going, how do you remember that? Mr. McKinney, have you ever witnessed my prodigious memory, sir?
I have many times.
So what I do with my students, such as Mr. McKinney, he actually bit the bullet and hired me as his, quote, brain coach. That's what I do. I'm a brain coach. I'm not a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm not a life coach. I'm a brain coach. And what I ask people that are interested in doing when they have me work for them is to do the alphabet backwards. They ask me, what's the first assignment I'm going to ask you to do? And they go, you want me to do the alphabet Z to A? I mean, I have a hard enough time doing A to Z. So when someone is asked to do the alphabet backwards, they don't do well. How many people in this room can recite the alphabet full speed from Z to A? So Mr. McKinney, would you show us, please?
Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, O, K, J, I, H, G, F, D, C, B, A.
That's very good, Mr. McKinney. Now, everyone here can learn the alphabet backwards from Z to A in less than 5 minutes with my technique. And if you can't do it within 5 minutes, then you're in the PA squad, which is passive aggressive. So many people don't understand. It's so easy. Can you do the alphabet backwards from A? Can you go A? Can you go BA? Can you go CBA? So when does your brain say, I can't do that? I bet you one thing for sure, if I was offering $10,000 in cash in a suitcase, tax-free, to have the alphabet backwards by the end of the day, there'd be people in here starting to write down and forget anything I'm saying. Just go Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, D, C, B, A. So then I do the alphabet from the ends to the middle. A, Z, B, Y, C, X, D, W, E, V, F, U, excuse me, that's the way it lines up. G, T, H, S, I, R, J, Q, K for men, in the middle out, N, M, O, L, P, K, Q, J, R, I, S, H, D, G, U, F, V, E, W, X, Y, Z, A. So some of my students can blow me out of the water when they're doing the alphabet from Z to A, from the ends to the middle out. Now, if I was to choose anybody in here to say, give me the 18th letter of the alphabet immediately without counting it out. Can you do it? It's R. Mr. McKinney, what's the 15th letter?
PQ.
PQ? No, 15th is O. He hasn't been practicing that part.
Yeah, that's not my specialty.
So the interesting thing about the whole brain power system is that there are people that started to have incredible results prior to the book coming out. And when these people started to talk to Mr. Walsh about how their brains were changing, he said, I got to help you write this book. And this is how the book came out. And I was supposed to go on Nightline for a full segment, but some mechanics interfered with that happening, but we plowed through with the project anyways. So I've been on ESPN Sports Center, top 10 plays of the day, for an unusual hand-eye coordination record. And one of the reasons they call me the Hammer Man is because when I started to think about getting more hand-eye coordination, and as my golf game started to become a very important part of my life, I saw Tiger Woods bouncing the ball off the wedge, so I started doing it. First day I could do it 5 times, and then 10 times, and then 20 times, and then I can now do it 5,000 times in a row at the wedge, and I can actually walk a mile without dropping one. And I know that proves I have way too much time in my hands, but I got some pretty good hand-eye coordination with a wedge, and I'll be demonstrating some of these skills with you. So after I did the wedge until I got bored, I started bouncing a ball off of a putter face. So I'm going to get out a ball out of my bag here, Now, make sure you don't grab this bag here without realizing that you probably could get a hernia, because there's a whole bunch of hammers in here. So we have quite a few hammers in this. I have all kinds of different balls in here. So we have a Titleist here. See if I can find my title. Probably one that's. I have many different balls, different types of companies' balls in here, so I can prove which ball actually works better for bouncing. So we'll just take one of these balls here, and we're going to demonstrate capacity to bounce the ball on the putter. So how many people here in this room would be able to bounce the ball off a putter, say, 100 times with their dominant hand? Is there anybody here that would want to take the challenge? So Mr. McKinney can do it with his dominant hand. So when you actually bounce it with your non-dominant hand, that definitely proves you have way too much time with your hands. So here's the whole concept. How many people in this room are right-handed? So how many people are left-handed? So that's pretty much the average, isn't it? They say that 1 in 10 is left-handed. That's pretty close to the average. So how many people in this room are right-handed golfers? So almost, how many left-handed golfers? So we have, okay, now it's interesting. So we had a lot more people raising their hand about being left-handed, but they're left-handed. So did someone try to make you a righty?
No, I've always wrote with my right, but my dad played golf left, so I bat left, I kick left, I play golf left, but right has always been the right hand.
So what's your name?
I'm Eric.
Eric, nice to meet you. Eric, Michael Lavery. So Eric is what they classify as mixed-handed. So many people are on one side of the scale. So there's a huge scale between right-handed, left-handed, mixed-handedness, and then the very unusual situation of an ambidextrous person. So when people tell me that they're ambidextrous, they say, let me see you write with your opposite hand. And that usually exposes them as not being ambidextrous. So if they could write equally well with either hand, then they would start to show that they have this ambidexterity. But then I ask them to serve a tennis ball, say 100 miles an hour with either hand, and they can't do it. Or hit a golf ball 300 yards either way, and they can't do it. So some people can train themselves to write with either hand, and many people have been actually switched from being a lefty at writing to a righty. Has anybody in this room had the experience of being switched? No one's been switched in this room? Oh, there's a couple. Sorry about that. So at one time, about 200 years ago, almost everyone was switched. Because the word for right is dexter, and the word for left, can anybody tell me what the word for left is?
Sinister.
Sinister, that's correct. So that comes from Latin. So that's why the righteous are on the right side of God, and the left are the sinisters, the sinostrals. So every language in Western culture, left means awkward, except for the Greeks. Because the Greeks for 200 years had a period where they promoted ambidexterity. And they had a very civilized, very wonderful period called the Bistophodon, where you read the first line to the right, the second line to the left. So I have some of my journals today, and I'll let you look at how I write with either hand in either direction, and I'll be demonstrating it on this whiteboard here today. So what happened in my own journey is that when I healed from the injury, I came back, and I had the best hand-eye coordination of my life. I couldn't run as fast because of the broken femur, so I lost a little bit of speed, but for some reason, my hand-eye coordination went through the roof. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we go outside, I'm going to show you guys how I bounce a golf ball on the shaft of a putter, and I can do it 200 times. On the round side of a ball-peen hammer, I can do it 394 times, and on a 16-ounce Stanley tool hammer, I did it 7,148 times, and I stopped because I said that's a good number. So what happened was, when I showed that I was using a Stanley hammer, I made a 5-minute DVD, and I sent it to Stanley Tool Company, and one of my sons filmed it, and I made the spoof on golf. I said, as I was running towards the camera and stopped the golf ball on the hammerhead, I said, Stanley is the guy that you should talk to. I mean, actually, it's the company. It's the company you should talk to about getting your golf game better. And then I took out Stanley hammers and bounced them off of 16-ounce hammers, ball peen hammers, 4-pound sledgehammers, 6-pound, 8, 10, 12, and 16-pound sledgehammers. And these guys thought it was hilarious, and they invited me back to their world headquarters, and I had Hammerman Day in New Britain, Connecticut, and I showed these people how I could hit a golf ball a long way with a really short backswing. So every day, on average, believe it or not, I exercise my OCD by bouncing balls off of different objects. So I do it 5,000 times a day on average now for the last approximate 15 years. So now I've now officially, to my knowledge, hit more balls than anybody who ever lived. Now, I'm serious about that, because I can bounce a ball on this thing here while I recite Shakespeare. Friends, Romans, and countrymen, lend me your ear, but come to bury season not to praise. So I can also do powers of 2, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. So what I do with my students is I match them up with another student that's doing the program, and another person is a doubting Thomas, and they say, this is ridiculous. And the guy that's doing the program that's focusing with the penmanship and these drills is starting to perform better. And Mr. McKinney's will actually watch people come out of a spiral. So Mr. McKinney actually sends some of his golfers to me not to even mess with their swing. So when a guy is swinging the club, I go, your swing looks great. Oh, don't you think it looks great. It's your ability to focus, that's the problem.
Michael, we had Mike Scheid here, who's the coach of Bryson DeChambeau, and I hooked Bryson up with Michael, and they talked for 4 hours on the phone, and then within 2 weeks he won the NCAAs and started. I'm not saying it was all Michael's fault. It certainly didn't stop Bryson from taking off, but Bryson called and thanked him and said, without you, there's another universe where I didn't win this thing.
Well, thank you. And he's a wonderful young man.
Yes, he is.
So Bryson and I, we never met, but we got a chance to know each other over the phone for 4 hours on 3 separate phone calls. And that phone call was actually initiated by a gentleman named Bobby Schaefer. I don't know if anybody knows Bobby Schaefer, but Bobby's a wonderful man, and Bobby actually went through some training with me. When you do whole brain power, it's not for the weak-minded. Because I'm very strict with the way I coach, but I'm very liberal with the way I think. I'm an artist. Sometimes people meet me. Mr. McKinney, he was kind of poking around at the whole brain power stuff for a few years before I actually said, Billy, it's time now. It's time to actually just think about having me help you out. And then I started to ask him some questions. I said, how's your mother doing? He says, sadly, she has passed from Parkinson's. And that's a problem now. Parkinson's disease is actually becoming a serious ailment now, and it's actually rising. Does anybody know what part of the brain actually is not working when you get Parkinson's? The only person that knows usually is a person that's afflicted by it in their family, so it's called the substantia nigra pars compacta. So what I did as a layperson is I wanted to become Mr. Ambidextrous. So you're now talking to one of the most ambidextrously coordinated people in the world. And I work with the Vendetti family, and that's the only ambidextrous pitcher in modern history that can actually throw with either hand in the major leagues. So Pat Vendetti made his debut this year. So I have done a lot of research on some of the greatest athletes that were converted from righty to lefty and lefty to righty. So for the last 32 years, I've been on the hunt. As Sherlock Holmes, I've been so interested in how the brain can be rewired, and I have so many irrefutable stories that anecdotally you can't disprove what I'm saying. So when Mr. Bryson DeChambeau listened to me, and he actually played this game with me, it shocked him initially. And many people that would want to play this game that I invented get shocked initially. And the game requires that you actually do something that's very unusual. You actually speak complete sentences from one to the next. And what happened to us as modern human beings, we said we don't need to do that anymore. And so when I'm doing my handwriting in my journals, there are no incomplete sentences. And I stay away from the word okay, like, right, and yeah. So I invented this game by which I actually live and breathe it. If there were 3 different matrices that you could live in, I live in the land of eagledom with my speech, not with the way I play golf. I'm sure almost every one of you here could smoke me on the golf course if I was having a bad day, but there are days where I can hit the ball pretty well, wouldn't you say, Mr. McKinney?
Yes, you do.
So I have an injury to my lower lumbar, and when they looked at my MRI, they said, you should be in a wheelchair. And when the doctor said, I don't even know how you can hit a golf ball in excess of 300 yards, I said, I'm doing it with my mind. So I hurt my back many times. I think there was a problem with me being in the hospital bed for 4 months that put my back in a precarious position. And then I injured it when I was in college. And then I injured it numbers of times. And then I injured it when I was trying to be a tournament tennis player and a long drive champion simultaneously. Because I have a problem with ADD, attention demanding deficit. I love playing guitar. I love telling jokes. I can do really good imitations of Sylvester Stallone and Bill Clinton. Here's my Sylvester Stallone. Okay, so they tell me that if you get hit in the head a couple 100,000 times boxing, you might have a problem. Remember where you put your wallet. Now I'm having a hard time remembering where I parked my car. You know it's really bad when you can't remember which car you took out. So I almost broke my leg doing the alphabet backwards. I was going, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I almost fell down the stairs. So you have to do handwriting. I only printed. Most people here have horrible handwriting, would you agree? How many people here have incredible handwriting? Mr. McKinney has the best handwriting of all my students, and he's still getting better. When I text message people, I text them in handwriting. Is that true, Mr. McKinney?
We do. But what used to be the worst, probably, is that fair enough?
Oh, it was incredible. The first day I asked him to do handwriting, he looked at me going, not that, not handwriting. It was really bad. And then I asked him to do it left-handed backwards, and that was even worse. And then I noticed that his handwriting had some quivers in it, shakiness. Is that true?
Still kind of does.
Yeah, but it's getting better.
It's getting better. much
It's
better.
getting better. The first day it was bad. How many people here have problems with their short game? That's amazing. No one has short. Okay, short game problem. How many people here have short-term memory problems? If you play this game that I invented, it's going to really start making you think about your short-term memory center. And here's my argument. If one would become curious about how the brain works, you would get way better at golf. Can you imagine that? Get way better at golf by learning about your own brain. It's interesting that when people are asked to learn about their own brain, the brain goes, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to learn about the hippocampus, and the basal ganglia, and the neurotransmitters serotonin and melatonin, and the acetylcholine and glutamate, and the GABA receptors, and how protein synthesis occurs in the brain. I'll just leave it up to science to figure out a magic pill so I can remember where I put my wallet. But it's the truth. So what happens to us as we watch aging people not get any better at golf and they get stuck in their handicap, and you see some whippersnapper at 7, he's just running rings around you by the time he's 15. And you go, what happened? Some other person retires at 50 and they're the beneficiary of some inheritance and they want to become a scratch golfer and they can never see the light of scratch. And the reason being is because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. There was a man today that told me that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Is that man here?
Yes, sir.
Your name is Robert, is that correct, sir?
As I said, I was stubborn too.
Is your name Robert?
Yes, sir.
So a gentleman named Tony bought a book. Where's Tony? And then another man named Mike bought a book. Where's Mike? There you go. There was actually, I think there was another man named, was it Jason? Did Jason buy a book? There you go. Jason's the gentleman that had the problem with the motorcycle accident, is that true? So what I do is I work on my memory every single day. I tell my memory, you're going to get better. And I make my brain do these exercises. So when I'm in the shower, instead of thinking about what I have to do for the day, I warm up my brain by doing the alphabet backwards from the end to the middle out. And then I do the powers of 2. And then I start reciting Shakespeare. And then I work on the presidents. How many people in this room can do the presidents in alphabetical order? Alphabetical order. Now we
Well,
do.
I'll get that too.
Mr. McKinney can do it in their terms, is that correct?
That's, yes, yeah.
So let's do the states in alphabetical order. I'll start with Alabama,
Alaska,
Arizona,
Arkansas,
California,
Colorado,
Connecticut,
Delaware,
Florida,
Georgia,
Hawaii,
Idaho,
Illinois,
Indiana,
Iowa,
Kansas,
Kentucky,
Louisiana,
Maine.
Maryland.
So, very good, Mr. McKinney. We don't want to bore these folks here. Mr. McKinney now has this elevated confidence in getting in front of people. Wouldn't you say so, Bill?
I do.
And one of the things that we worked on with McKinney is you are going to go up in front of a crowd of people as though you're speaking to one person. So now I'm the crowd. Speak to me, Mr. McKinney.
Nice.
And stop saying like and okay right now. I said okay.
I didn't say that.
You did too. You said okay so many times it was ridiculous.
At the
Initially,
beginning, yes, that's fair enough.
so what I do when I'm working with customers over the phone, and they're in Australia, is I ring a bell every time they can't speak a complete sentence without stumbling across those words. So the rest of the day, I want you to listen to those words. Like, okay, right now. It's amazing. The average human being in the United States of America uses those 4 words 1,000 times per day. Well, there's 86,400 seconds in a day. And there's approximately 27,400 seconds that we actually are awake. So during that moment when we're awake, we're going, for sure, bro. Yeah, I got it now. It's amazing. And young people have the case of like-itis. I call it Lori-itis. Like, okay, right, yeah, Lori-itis. And So the word I'm afraid, is used by everybody. Have you ever been a teacher and the kid's not listening? Has anybody here had a kid that didn't listen when they were coaching them? Oh, come on. Only one person in this whole room had someone that didn't listen to them? Seriously, everybody here should raise their hands, both hands, because that's the case. And I heard a gentleman today saying that he has the championships for the World Juniors. Is that gentleman still here? The gentleman? What's your name, sir?
Marty?
Marty. So Marty, I can tell you one of the reasons that you're not putting the American flag for number 1. I'll tell you why. And a lot of people don't want to hear this. Because the kids today have too many beta endorphins in their brain. Does anybody know what a beta endorphin is? When everybody says, oh, I had an endorphin rush, that's a very vague and ambiguous statement. Mr. McKinney, what's a beta endorphin?
Is it a hormone or a neurotransmitter that goes through your brain?
No, it's not a neurotransmitter. It's a polypeptide.
Ah.
Well,
Another big word.
when people
Is it a
bought
big
my
word?
book today, my suggestion, and I'm not exaggerating here, in order for you to pass an oral examination on the contents of that book, you have to read it about 25 times to pass the oral examination. But if you want to just have a fun time looking through it and then reading some of these touchy feel-good stories, then you should do so. Let me tell you a story about a gentleman named Robert Twine. So Robert Twine sees my golf bag, and in my golf bag are hammers. And then when I ask him to do this, to stop the ball, and make it come to a rest that way. Well, my club is worn in the middle, so it doesn't want to stay in the middle. So now that I'm keeping that ball there, would you say that my hands are shaking or they're steady?
Steady.
So this steadiness of hand allows me to now start to make the ball go in circles. So when I'm playing golf and it's a fivesome in front of me, this is what I'm doing on the tee box. Now, is this against the rules of the game of golf?
No?
Can I do that?
Sure. For those of you in the back, it's spinning like a top.
So then, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of come down here.
Harlem Globetrotters.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to bounce the golf ball and spin like this in a circle. I can even do this on ice skates.
Come on.
So that ball's spinning here. So I do that with either hand. So I get it high revolutions. So what this does is it inspires me to go to an even higher level of hand-eye coordination. So I do that with 2 clubs at the same time. Because I have a theory of ambidexterity, and how the theory of ambidexterity started in my life is in chapter 1, the Michael Lavery story, in which I learned how to play tennis ambidextrously.
What about Robert Twine?
You want to get to Robert Twine first?
You started with him.
Well, sometimes I go on tangents and I get back to Robert
We're
Twine.
coming back to Robert Twine.
So let's get back to Robert Twine. So Robert Twine sees my stuff in my bag with the hammers, and he says, "This is ridiculous. Hammers and teaching golf." I said, "I'm not teaching golf. I'm practicing my own golf game." So then when I saw him cooking his ball with excessive tilt of the horizontal axis, because that's what a side spin is. When someone says your side spin's too excessive, the ball doesn't actually spin sideways. It spins backwards or forwards in tennis or in a curveball. But the ball doesn't have side spin. And I always thought it had side spin until Mr. McKinney told me it didn't. He told me it's the tilt of the horizontal axis. Has anybody heard that before?
Yep.
So are there some golfers here that believe that there's a side spin on the ball too? So what happens now is when he's tilting his axis to the left, his ball is not going straight. So I said, it's obvious that you're having problems when you're playing tournaments. So he says, "I'm struggling." And I said, "You're about a +2? He says, "I used to be a +4. I said, "I've never heard of you, so maybe +3, +2? He said, "Okay, +2. So what happens within an hour of showing him some things about how the brain works, he went to Cleveland Golf Company up in Huntington Beach, and he put out backspin rate that was 1,000 points lower than he was a week prior. Because they were fitting him for clubs, and they said, "Well, we need to get you new clubs now. These clubs aren't going to work with your..." And then he was hitting the ball 20 yards further in 1 week. And then 5 days later, he shot a 57 at Costa Mesa's Mesa Linda Golf Course. I know it's a municipal course in Costa Mesa, but he shot a 57. It's par 70, shot 13 under, lifted out 2 putts, lifted out his last putt. His last putt hit the center of the cup and bounced out. It was a 1/4 inch from going back in. That was witnessed by the starter, a gentleman named Kyle. And the 4 men that played that 5-some, they said that he was in a trance as though he had sold the soul to the devil because he didn't hit 1 bad shot. And that was 5 days after he was frustrated with overcooking his ball. And I put him through the brain training. So when he came back from Cleveland with $1,000 worth of clubs, he then said, "I want you to work with me. I want to hire you. I have to hire you because whatever you did to my brain, I mean, I want more of it." So he went through the process. And you can see him on the internet. Plug in Robert Twine, whole brain power. You can see Robert Twine bouncing balls off of 4-pound sledgehammers as he's reciting the states and alphabetical order. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but what that does is it actually creates a system called steroidogenesis. So when you hear these terms, neurogenesis, steroidogenesis, synaptogenesis, these are real terms. These are real scientific terms. So the old pillars of neuroscience are being stripped down, and they're building a whole new foundation first. And now we're looking at the brain going, "Oh my God, we don't even know how this thing works now." A man is on National Geographic. You can find him on YouTube. He has knowledge about the brain that blows my mind. And he said to his students when he posed the question, if you would say that a mile equates to full, complete knowledge of the mechanics of the human brain, where are we at on the journey? Where are we at, young lady? How about you, sir?
Maybe a 1/4 mile.
And miss?
1 foot?
He's the closest. We're 3 inches. Now they're expanding the number of neurotransmitters the brain makes. I mean, the dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, glutamate, acetylcholine. These are just some of them. They don't even have names for some of them now. So the situation now is we have the opportunity to look into the mechanics of the brain, and one thing's for sure, when you use both sides of the brain and you have that mindfulness, you actually thicken the cable that connects the two hemispheres. Does anybody know what that cable's called? It's called the corpus callosum. That corpus callosum is 4 inches wide, comprised of 250 million fibers, laid end to end. The wires of the corpus callosum could wrap around the world. So the situation in our society today is we're so distracted by the outside that we don't even want to go inside about how to enhance our skills. And my recommendation to people is to start practicing penmanship, because they're not even teaching it anymore. So if a person has a shaft and it has the head of a pen and they can't even control that, then how are they supposed to control a shaft that has a head on it? And the longest yard is 3 feet. So this golfer is getting 4 3 putts and he's hitting every green, I mean, in regularity, pretty much. And when he's 16 out of 18 greens, I don't want that kid on my golf team, 16 out of 18, but when he's got 4 3 putts, and the reason being is because he doesn't have spatial intelligence. And Mr. McKinney's watched some of my spatial intelligence when we're practicing on these putting surfaces. And one time I made a couple long putts and he threw his club down. He said, all right, he had to call somebody. Get up, get over here, you gotta. It's the truth. And yet, when I'm playing golf, I'm just an average guy out there. But I'm not here to tell you to follow the way I play golf. I'm asking you to listen to some of my advice and become inquisitive about how to make your brain stronger so you have less neurotic behavior on a golf course. And so what happens is when a gentleman named Steve is playing golf with McKinney and Mike, remember Mike? So we were out there, and Steve is talking in my backswing, and he's going, and I'm going, this is ridiculous. And he doesn't think that I have good hearing. Dude, do me a favor, will you? Just let me hit the ball. I know it's a little par 3, it's only 90 yards, but just let me hit the ball. So he's doing, so I pull him aside, I go, Steve, you know why you're not playing great golf? It's because you don't respect others, you don't respect yourself. Shut up. Yeah. So he's going, and I nudge him in the side. I go, I guarantee you're not going to hit the green. So he misses the green. Do me a favor, will you? So the guy hits the green. I said, now, no one's going to talk in your backswing. He hits the green. I go, we have a pattern now. Let's see if we can continue the pattern. So Steve decides to hire me as his brain coach. Now he's playing Shady Canyon. He's even par after 9 holes. He's never played before. Even par. So guess what happens? Mr. Hyde shows up. You know that Mr. Hyde says, cart girl, can I have one of those strong rum and cokes? 9 over in the back. So he sabotaged himself. And that night, he's literally crying in his coffee. And he's telling me the story because I had 3 birdies in a row on even par, and I'm playing with these multimillionaires, and their golf games aren't as good as mine, and they're drinking. So I make that fatal decision, I drink myself. And this guy, if he breaks par, is he going to be one happy camper? Billy? Over the moon, that's exactly correct. So what happened? He let his Hyde sabotage him. So I want you to think about this. If Mr. DeChambeau is 4 hours on the phone with me and we start talking about short-term memory and I'm giving him some information and he's not getting 100% of it, and he's giving me his information and I'm getting literally 100% of it, then I'm saying to him, I think we need to work on some of the skills that keeps you in the moment, and then I'm going to remind you that when you do go pro, because you are going to be a pro, that some of the best pros make up to 9 to 10 times as much money off the golf course than on the golf course. So think about Phil Mickelson. He's not the star golfer that he used to be, but he's making about $40 million this year. So Bryson and any other golfer that wants to listen to this advice, let's see if we can improve our skills at articulating our position so other mothers and fathers say, if you grow up to be a golfer, that's the guy I want you to imitate. So think about the way golf now is, people throw their clubs. Do you ever see Ben Hogan throw his club in a tournament? I don't think I ever saw Ben Hogan throw a club. I think if they had footage of it, it would be all over YouTube. But Ben Hogan had beautiful handwriting. Ever seen Jack Nicklaus's handwriting? It's also very beautiful. Have you ever seen Arnold Palmer's? The Palmer method. That's what I teach. I teach the Palmer method. And when you see some of the handwriting of pros in the past, they cared about having a beautiful signature. Today, it's and that's called anxiety. So just imagine that you're an anxiety-prone teacher that's teaching the students that are anxiety-prone. So would you say that you have better memory when you have anxiety or when you're calm?
Calm.
So now here's the suggestion I want you ladies and gentlemen to consider. Become calm yourself, and one of the best ways to become calm is to write about wanting to be calm. So in the act of writing, if you're not calm, how's your handwriting going to look? It's not going to appear that beautiful. So if you were writing a letter to, say, the Queen of England, because she had just invited you to Buckingham Palace, would you give her some sloppy stuff, or would you actually attempt to? If you had an audience with the Queen of England, would you say, yeah, that's really cool, wow. Yeah, that's really awesome. That was really cool, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, William and the new baby, for sure. So when you think about it, when we're asking somebody to do something very difficult, such as hit a golf ball out of a trap or control their emotions, and we're anxiety prone and we're actually fostering the neuroticism, then we look at our golfer and say, what's going on with the kid? And Mr. McKinney's now practicing that with some of his students.
Yeah.
He has a couple of students that are coming back and says, Billy, it's amazing how poorly my classmates speak. So Mr. McKinney is practicing the Eagle speak, and then when he's out in his universe, if he wants to do the hawk talk, he can. And then if he wants to do pigeonese, he can as well. So pigeonese is what happens when pigeons talk to each other. So have you ever noticed that pigeons don't really care where they actually do their excrement? Have you ever heard pigeons actually speaking properly to each other and being civilized? Now, eagles are very civilized, but they're also lonely. Golf's a very lonely game. A lot of people don't appreciate golf because it's not a team sport in the true aspect of the team sport, where you can blame the other guy for why you lost. It's easy to blame the pitcher why you lost, because he gave up 5 home runs. So it's easy to blame the shortstop you can be 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, but it wasn't your fault, it was the shortstop's fault. So what happens to us in golf is the only person that we really have to blame is ourselves, and that's really difficult, because we're actually not competing against anyone, we're competing against ourselves, and we're having to see if we can navigate a very difficult golf course, and that's why they took all the other 4-letter words away. Because that's why golf is golf, because there's no other 4-letter word that actually applies to the sport. That's why some people call it flogging. That's backwards, left-handed.
Speaking of which, will you show us some mirror writing?
Oh, I would be honored to do so. See, Mr. McKinney, he cut me down to 1 hour. He's seen me go longer. Now, when I am writing on a board, if I was a teacher, I would write my name, and I'm going to work on the slope of my handwriting, and I'm going to respect the beautiful shape of each letter. So you can see that the slope here, so this is how most people write. And there's about, how many millions of dollars in lawsuits for pharmacists giving you the wrong medication with a doctor who can't even read his prescription? And then the guy can't even write me, you're gonna have him do surgery on you? If I ever consider surgery, I always ask the doctor, can I see a sample of your handwriting, please? Your left hand. I think, I'll get a second opinion. Now, do we have an eraser here for this board?
We'll get you some salads.
Thank you. So what I also do is, as I write this way here, so this is my name, left-handed backwards. So if I'm ever taking notes and I want to hide them from you, I write left-handed backwards, because it's really difficult to turn it over in your mind. So sometimes I write with two hands at the same time in opposite directions, so I'm writing this way here. So when I'm drawing a palm tree, I draw it with two hands like this right here, and it makes it work way better for me. Because I'm using both sides of my brain. Thank you so much. Now, what we're going to do is teach you a technique that will help your putting. Now, most people here in this room are putting from the right side of the ball. Putting right. So notice that if this is the hole, and here you are, here's the ball. Which way do you have to go with your arm? You have to go to the left. How many times do we go to the left and right?
To right?
Well, how many times do we go to the left when we're writing? We're going this way here, aren't we?
Never, yeah.
Yeah, so what you're doing now is you're going to activate the non-dominant lobe of your brain. That's called the visual cortex, or the occipital lobe. So this is what you do. You take this right here and you make the putt. See the smoothness? See how I saw the high point in the break? But most people do it this way here. When I give them this drill, they're like this. So it's leaking down. So you started here with a spasm here. So that's a spastic signal that's coming from the brain's motor strip, because there's a couple of things that aren't working to peak efficiency. That's your basal ganglia, your cerebellum, and the motor strip is able to send a signal to the hand, the opposite hand. And now all of a sudden you're going, I can't believe I missed that putt. How did I miss that putt? But then again, your left brain, which is logical, doesn't see the break, and the right brain's telling the left brain, it breaks way higher. You gotta find that pitch mark that was not fixed and put it outside the pitch mark. It's gonna leak down to the cup. And the left brain goes, no, it's not. It's only two holes outside the cup. And the right brain goes, it's 6 holes. And 85% of golfers miss for the majority of the time on the low side of the cup. And I've never seen a ball without seismic activity go up the hill into the cup. So this is a drill that I practice. I take the ball, boom, there's a putt, there's a putt, there's a putt, and that one I missed because there's maybe a little bit of spasticity there. But for the most part, it's clean. So I practice writing the first line, so my golf game is better because, and then I write upside down and backwards, my brain. I know it sounds weird, but this actually works. Because my brain is going, I think I figured this out. I think I figured out where I need to hit this ball and how hard I need to hit it, because my proprioceptors in my hands are all-time high. So when I give people these drills with the hammers and they can't even bounce the ball off a rubber mallet that you can play ping pong with, and I'm going to bounce it on a ball-peen hammer, then you go, Michael, you're a weirdo. I said, no. There's a guy on the internet now that just set a world record of bouncing a ball on his right hand 100 times on the ball-peen hammer and his left hand 100 times. His name is Von Husenstam, and he actually ran a mile bouncing a golf ball from one rubber mallet to the other in 8 minutes and 28 seconds. And now he's going to break 8, and he's going to break 6. He also is a United States expert chess champion, and he's on the speed chess, and he's a master chess player. He also memorized 2 to the 100 power. That's a 31-digit number. For the record, 2 to the first power is 2, to the 10th power is 1,024, to the 20th power is...
1,048,566.
That's very good. And to the 30th power is 1,073,741,824. To the 40th power is 1,099,511,627,776. To the 70th power is this ungodly number of 1 sextillion. I like that number, 1 sextillion. 180 quintillion, which is the United States deficit now. 591 quadrillion, 620 trillion, 717 billion, 411 million, 303,424. And what that does is actually makes my hippocampi structures make a chemical called cycloprotenyl which is the technical name for testosterone. Now, how many men in here would want to have a secret of lifting T, Mr. T? There's not one guy here in this room that wants his T higher?
Yeah.
How many women in this room want their estrogen levels higher? No woman wants. If you don't have high estrogen levels, then you don't have the youth that you had when you were 20. So don't be afraid of having the testosterone. Even ladies need to have higher testosterone levels because testosterone aromatizes into estrogen. Do you know that? Oh, I don't want to have a high T levels. I said, well, you're not going to have high estrogen levels. So this whole concept about learning, if you can't learn rather quickly, say in the act of doing music. My son's a musician. My son James is a very talented musician, and I keep on harping on him to memorize the diatonic scales. And sometimes he says, no, Dad, that's not what I want to do. But his best friend knows the diatonic scales, so I get a phone call. Dad, it's incredible. This guy is doing the diatonic scales. Let me see if I get this straight. I told you that 3 years ago. But it's really better when it's coming from your friends. So here's the whole concept on some advice you might consider. Practice being the coolest, calmest, anxiety-free coach and see what happens with your students. And my son told me that there's a tribe of people in Africa. So when someone's acting up in the tribe, all the people in the tribe get this person together and they start going, that guy's the best guy, honest, most honest kid. He's a thief. He's an honest guy. Do anything for his neighbor. So instead of saying, that guy is a bad guy, he said, that guy's an incredible guy. He starts believing in his own lie. So what happens to us when we're playing golf? You say, that's incredible. I can't believe how well you're playing. Instead of saying, God, you played really horribly today. So just imagine that your handwriting was horrible, and then it gets to be poor. And then it gets to be excellent. And then it gets to be extraordinary. And then for some reason, you're shooting in the 60s. There's this young man named Spencer Wallace. And Mr. McKinney had a gentleman inquire as to what he should do with his boy, because his boy is 17 and he's floundering in his tournament golf, and the dad's spending lots of money traveling lots of golf tournaments. And the kid's never shot a round of golf in the 60s in 7 years of tournament play, and he did 6 rounds of golf in the 60s in 1 month, and he actually won a high school tournament, and he bounces a ball off a 4-pound sledgehammer every day, believe it or not, 3,000 times a day. But the reason he's doing it 3,000 times a day is because I can do 3,000 hits off of a 4-pound sledgehammer in less than 15 minutes. And so when the kid starts to hit the ball 290 yards, and he's only 105 pounds, so this kid now, in the state of Utah, is hitting the ball pound for pound further than any kid in the state. And I can show you a photograph of this young man on my iPhone, and he looks as though he's a little leaguer that got in the photograph. You look at, and the kid behind him is literally 14 inches taller. It's a true story. So I call him the giant slayer. So he has to send me handwriting samples all of the time, almost every day. And if he doesn't, I get on him. Then he has to do the powers of 2. So I pulled him off of video games, and I pulled him off of television. And now the family sits around at night practicing my program. And the boy that's 12 in the family is also playing awesome golf. And the dad's hitting the ball further because the dad went out to Home Depot and bought an 8-pound sledgehammer. I'm totally serious. So Home Depot can't even keep the S-Wing hammer in stock.
And can I say, he's called me and thanked me several occasions for turning them on to Michael. And he said, our family life is so civilized now. Everyone speaks so nicely to each other. Teenage boys. It's made a difference in their whole life.
The mom got up on the phone. She said, Michael, thank you so much. At first, the dad is bouncing balls off the hammers. So the dad has got a rubber mallet. So this is how we start everybody off. We start you off with a rubber mallet first. I'm going to bring my bag of hammers up front here. Now, be careful, this thing here is very heavy. So what we do is we have you, first of all, we have you try to just put the ball on the hammer without falling off. You can't rest it on the dimple. You have to actually keep it on there like this. And that's really difficult because that's spatial intelligence. Now that's with your dominant hand. So then we have to do that with our non-dominant hand. So then what you have to do is you have to bend your knees. You can't just stand there like this because you're not going to do it. You have to get into this athletic position. Sometimes similar to a guy that's kind of standing over the ball as an athlete instead of like nonchalant. I can my feet any place I want to. So what we do now is we learn a new memory. This is called a procedural memory. And anybody here that wants to get the initial training that I offer, I will be more than glad to do so. What we do is we bounce the ball one time and catch it. And then we go 1, 2 and catch it. And then 1, 2, 3 and catch it. And then we take a breath and we relax as though we got 3 pars in a row. But guess what happens? After you get 3, you start getting greedy. That's called championship-itis. You start going, then you deflect it off the hammer. And then you have to start over again. And the guy goes, no, I'm going to start at 4. I said, no, you're going to start at 1. And then you do the same thing with your left hand. 1. And you go 1, 2. And you go 1, 2, 3. And now, this is kid. He's bouncing. This is a 32-ounce hammer. This is a 16-ounce hammer. So he's bouncing from one hand to the other. He's going ZYX. Excuse me. It's not a funny matter. This is very serious stuff. So now, so what we do now is we get out Stanley. Now, my world record of bouncing a golf ball off a 4-pound sledgehammer is 3,750 times. And then the camera shut off right now. So this is how you bounce a golf ball on a 4-pound sledgehammer. You put some spin on it like that right there, and then you move it to this hand here, and then you go back and forth, and you go 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 206, 512, 1,024, 2,048, 4,006, 8,000. Oh, I can't believe it. Thank you. And then, you see here, my son said, Dad, what are you doing with all these hammers?
Michael, why would multitasking like that, doing the 2 things together, be a good thing?
Now this is a tack hammer, much smaller head.
Can you answer that question? Why does multitasking and
Why
doing
do
those
both
2
things?
things, how does that help you?
Well, think about it. I have a hammer in one hand, so the right hand's connected to the left brain, and the right brain's connected to the left hand. So I'm going back and forth. So my corpus callosum is going.
But say when you're doing a recital, 2, 4, 8, 16.
So now I have 2 motor strips firing simultaneously, similar to a piano player or a drummer. And now I have my memory, and the speech production is in another side of the motor strip. So we get the Wernicke's speech center, the Broca's speech center. These are all terms that are in the book. And then what we have is the right side of the brain giving the visual clue as to what number's next. So when you get into the big numbers, and you get into quadrillions, and you're bouncing the ball on the shaft like this, and you're going 1 quadrillion, 125 trillion, 899 billion, 906 million, 842,624. What I did was I accessed my whole brain, believe it or not, when I'm doing that. And then the weird thing is, it made my grip strength so off the charts that I invite anybody in this room to attempt to outgrip me, because it's not going to happen. Because I bounce golf balls off of 16-pound sledgehammers with 5-pound metal balls. And we're coming down to the home stretch, Mr. McKenna.
2 minutes. It's great. It's entertaining. You can stay here after lunch or through lunch. Feel free to talk to people.
Well, I would love to do that.
Join us for
How
lunch.
old were you when you started doing this stuff?
I
How long have
was-
you been doing it for?
I've been doing the ambidexterity
Yeah.
in retrospect since I've been a kid, because I was a left-handed hockey player, and I played guitar, and I played 20,000 hours of guitar if I played it 1 minute. So basically, in retrospect, I was a baseball player, so my left hand was already active. But then when the light bulb went off and I realized that I could become an ambidextrous tennis player, I was in my mid-20s and I started fooling around with it. And then one day I decided I'm going for it. I was 29 years of age. And what happened was when a man said to me, "What are you doing at the driving range every single day? Do you have a job?" I said, "No, I'm an artist." So he was one of the pros at a golf course. So he was making fun of me because I'm out there every single day and I'm hitting lefty and righty and lefty and righty. He goes, "You suck lefty, you suck righty. Figure out which way you're going to suck from." And I go, so let me see if I can get this straight. So then the fighting words. So what I did was I just said, "I appreciate your advice." And I started bouncing a golf ball off the hammer 10,000 times a day, every single day.
Wow.
So in 1 year's time, I bounced a golf ball on average 3,650,000 times. And then I sent the tape to Stanley Tool Company. This was when I was 43 years of age. I had never broken 110 in my life. And so I camped out at the range because they had all the balls you could hit. $250. This is the deal of the century. $250 for 3 months. I went, $250 for 3 months? So I was at the range every day hitting 500 to 800,000 balls. I mean, Mo Norman actually took over my life. I actually kind of have a wide stance like Mo and a short backswing. And I hit the ball similar to most Mo Norman at impact. But I have much more movement in my legs, and sometimes I let go of my hands. So what happened was, I got invited on to ESPN Sports Center, so then the general manager sees me on ESPN and says, come in my office, Hammer. And he's trying to bounce a golf off a hammer, and he can't do it. And then he sees my artwork, which I'll demonstrate some of my artwork with you folks. So what happens is, he says, we just got a phone call from the Orange County Register, and at the same time, they got a call from Stanley Tool Company. And then 1 week later on the David Letterman show, bouncing golf balls with a hammer. And then now all of a sudden they go, "Mike, what do you do in the mornings?" I said, I hit golf balls at the range. He says, "Well, we're going to give you an opportunity to get here first thing in the morning, and what do you shoot?" I said, "I don't keep score. I just have fun at the range. I don't play golf course." He goes, "How many times have you played outdoors?" I said, "I played it twice, and I realized I wasn't ready for it, so I figured someone would actually give me a chance to play it for free." And so that's what happened. I got 2 years of free golf at Aliso Viejo Golf Course in Aliso Viejo, California. And on 30 rounds of golf, I shot a 65, witnessed by 2 other gentlemen. And so what happened with me was, I met a guy named Dan Anselmo, and Dan Anselmo, who's the son of John Anselmo, taught me some short game play, and I started getting up and down. I mean, it was almost miraculous. But I have these big forearms, and I have a club that is F3 in the weighting system. My drive is F3, so I have a really short backswing, but I was driving some of the par 4s over there. And sometimes I actually cheat and step into the ball, but I can't do that because it really causes people to have problems. So when some people that knew me painting pictures in Laguna Beach saw me on the golf course playing every day for free in the morning. So what I would do is I'd go out there, the first card out the gate, boom, I dropped 4 balls at every hole. And all of a sudden I started to tighten it up. And before you know it, I'm going, I got 2 pars and 2 double bogeys, and I said, that's good. And then all of a sudden I started getting 3 pars and 1 triple bogey, and I said 3 out of 4 is not bad. And then I started to actually play golf, and I started to make it happen. And then one day I got thrown in with 3 guys, and they said, "Do you want to play a skins game?" I go, "A skins game? What the hell is a skins game?" So they took my money. I said, "That's not good. Not good at all." So I practiced and practiced my short game, and next time I played them, I took their money because I had finally broken under par, and literally I broke the under par really quickly. And it's kind of hard for people to understand how I did it, but I can explain it to you, and I can give you some testimonial from other people. And Mr. McKinney seen me play some pretty stellar rounds of golf and some pretty horrible rounds of golf.
Always under 80.
So last time I played with McKinney, I hadn't played golf in 6 weeks, and I still shot a 78, and I got an eagle that day. So you can see my swing on YouTube, the revolutionary golf swing of the Hammerman, and I know sometimes the stuff that I'm doing is kind of weird, but when you see some of my hand-eye coordination outside, I think you'll start to understand what I'm doing. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to be, yes.
Charles,